Welcome to the Star Chamber Show live podcast. We're at episode number 459, and it is a great evening here in central Kentucky, Lexington to be exact, where I, Stephen Zimmer, am broadcasting from. And joining me in a few moments in the co host. Are we getting signal here? Tell me in the chat room if we're getting signal. Are we getting signal now? Okay. I was told that we weren't getting signal right away. So I don't think you heard anything from me. So yes, I guess I have to do the intro over again. So we will. But this is the Star Chamber Show, of course, episode number 459, and this is Stephen Zimmer, broadcasting live from Lexington, Kentucky, and joining me right now, as a matter of fact, is the loquacious, the vivacious, and the audacious Holly Phillippe. Holly, how are you doing?
I am ready to go.
I had an issue with the microphone, and it wasn't on for the first couple of minutes of the show. So
Oh,
I,
cute. Yeah.
I just now got figured out that I reset the microphone, and we're rolling.
So
And
you
so
you
yeah,
had you had some interesting things before I was even getting in here.
yes,
I
yes,
was I
and
was having kitty cat issues, but I've got it under control now.
oh no. Well, yes, I was just saying though that the Imaginarium
Hang on,
Convention is
buddy.
is affiliated with the Star Chamber show. So we don't have any new guests or panels to announce this week. We had a ton last week. So if you checked that last week's show, we had 28 workshops and 4 panels and a lot of new guests that we announced last week. We will have some more probably coming for next week's show that we can announce, and maybe some new programming. So that is, so we're kind of quiet on that front. But I did mention also that I am going to be with Holly at the Conference of Writers in Frankfort, Kentucky this Saturday. Great conference, 4th annual event. If you check back to the Virginia Smith episode just a couple of weeks ago, we gave a great preview of it, and I'll be serving in the capacity of for one-on-one sessions for writers wanting to know more about the editing and publishing world. And so I'll be looking forward to working with a lot of writers and all throughout the day of all genres. But yeah, you can register and get into the event, of course, all the way up to the day of. So please do join us if you can, because it's going to be a fantastic day. Holly and I love this event, and Holly will be there. She'll be running a table, and of course, you know Holly, she'll be everywhere. So you'll
I will
see
be
her all.
all over the place doing all kinds of things.
Yeah, you'll see
Now,
her all.
did you talk about, I did add a couple things to the schedule.
No, I didn't add anything that hasn't been announced since last week. So
Okay.
maybe it's
Well, I would like to announce that the Vamp Chat podcast will be doing a live podcast, and they will be interviewing a couple, maybe 3, if they have the time, guests from Imaginarium at Imaginarium. This will be that Saturday of Imaginarium at 8:15 in the carriage room. They are Vamp Chat. If you don't know, you can check them out here on Podbean also, but they're devoted to vampire fiction, fanged folklore, and gothic imagination. And it will be hosted by Dan Clefstead and Eva Vertris. And they do encourage audience participation and questions. So that's going to be neat on Saturday at
mhm.
Imaginarium. And then I believe I added, did I not? I've slept since then. I thought I added a workshop. I did not yet. I did not put it on there. Okay. But yeah, I did get the Vamp chat worked out. And I did want everybody to know that is going to be on that Saturday. And it'll be after the awards and all of that. And it'll start, before the karaoke and all that good stuff. So yeah, check it
Good
out.
deal. Good deal. Good deal. And we do have a couple of important updates to pass along. The not last spot in the main expo hall was reserved today, so those are sold out. And it's important for you to check if you still want an expo space there. Check back on the exhibitor page on the Imaginarium site, because we will keep it updated if a space does become available due to a
And it
cancellation,
happens.
and it
Yeah.
does happen. And however, in Creatives Alley, there is one more space left. There is one more space left, but you'll have to get that soon, because that's probably be gone over the next few days. So if you want a space in the expo, for sure, there is one. It's in Creatives Alley, and definitely pick that up as soon as you can. And then important deadline for all of you who are screenwriters or filmmakers, and please also tell your friends who are. This Friday is the regular deadline for the film festival. So you can submit visual projects and screenplays through Film Freeway. You can also submit screenplays through the International Screenwriters Association. We use both platforms, so make sure that you get them in Friday, because that's the regular entry fee, and we also take a bulk of our official selections from what is submitted after Friday. There is a late deadline period that we do keep a few spots open and do not fill until we see what comes in there. But the bulk of our spots are filled after the regular deadline passes, and that's this Friday. So make sure that you get your projects in by Friday, just better all around, and give you a better shot it being an official selection. So for this year's film festival, which is going to be fantastic, and we got a new co-director of the film festival, Drew Graber, aboard, and he's working hard already in evaluating things for the official selections. So yes, it's going to be good. Going to be very good. So we'll move over now to the folks that brought you tonight's show, and that is Sandy Lender, the genre blender, and Ren Garcia. So we'll start with Ren, and then we'll go to Sandy. So first up, here's Ren.
The League of Elder dares to be unusual. It's easy to be swept away in this bold and uninhibited landscape where fantastic heroes become old friends and sinister villains inhabit every dark corner. Dare to explore things best left alone. Each book is your lantern, lighting the path to a world never before seen. So what do you say? Are you weird enough for us?
Yes, we are.
Yes, Ren, indeed we are.
Indeed we are. Indeed we are. And yes, we're still working on Rand to get a confirmation on him coming this summer. We will not give up. We will not give up. and here's one from Sandy. And definitely pay close attention to this particular book because it is a gem, folks.
Are you a creative person working a 9-to-5 job to survive? Let's look at how to keep your energy and joy alive with the new motivational business book, Capture Your Dream, from author Sandy Lender. In Capture Your Dream, Sandy offers stories, lessons, inspiration, SWOT analysis, goal stacking strategies, and more to help you map your plan to achieve a dream job or side hustle. As a creative herself, Sandy knows it takes compromise and commitment to keep the day job to survive while chasing the dream to thrive. Assess your dragon score. Learn more about Capture Your Dream at AuthorSandyLender.com.
And thank you very much, Sandy. She is awesome and definitely appreciate your support. And that book is great. You definitely should check it out. And so, yes, we're going to go ahead and get into tonight's show with a very special guest. Hello to LJ Mack and Fax Porcupine Podcast. Just both entered the chat room. So, yes, chat room's open. So come on in, folks, because we always take questions and comments from there. But tonight's guest is an author and a creative writing professor. She is the author of the YA novel, The Butterfly Circle, and also an adjunct professor in SNHU's creative writing program. And she's the senior editor at the Journal of Creative Writing Studies and the director of the Creative Writing Initiative, MTSU Write. So tonight, folks, we bring aboard for the very first time, it's my honor and pleasure, Dr. Mary Leoson. And Mary, you should be live now. Your mic should be on.
Hey, everyone. How are y'all?
Good.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, it's great. It's great talking to you and on the phone, at least. I've been we've had a lot of email correspondence, but I got to chat with you yet.
Yeah, it's nice to hear your voices.
It's a little different.
Yeah, and Holly tells me that you've been really busy. That you're going for a second PhD, I think, is what Holly was.
Yeah, that is amazing. I was like, man, I'm an underachiever here. I got my first. She's going for her second here.
I love learning and I love working with students. And yeah, this was just an opportunity to grow in a different area. So, but yeah, it's a lot of work.
You better believe it.
How much more do you have before you get the second one?
So I actually
what remains?
Yesterday found out that I passed it's like a comprehensive examination that you have to pass before you move into the dissertation phase.
Mm-hmm.
So coursework seems to be done, and now I just have to do the actual dissertation.
Wow.
Nice. Those
are fun.
I just served as an editor on a capstone document for someone that was getting their doctorate, and he has a 160-page manuscript. And so, yes, I know how much work is involved in those. For sure.
Fascinating. So do you know what your topic is going to be? What your dissertation is going to be over?
So right now I'm leaning towards something with MTSU Write, which is community-facing creative work organization that I lead. My full-time job is an instructor at MTSU, Middle Tennessee State University, in the English department. But this initiative is community-facing, and so anybody across the country can really participate from home in the mentorships. So I have only been director for about a year, and I really want to evaluate kind of what's been working, what hasn't been working, and identifying new opportunities. So that's one thing that I'm considering. But then also in doing this research for this comprehensive exam, I came across this initiative in Canada. I think it's in Saskatoon, and it's an academic library that hosts what's called write-ins. Basically like an am writing type of a group or a shut up and write type of a group that meets, I think it's weekly or bi-weekly. And we have a couple of those initiatives on campus, but they're really for students. And I would love to see our library at MTSU kind of bridge that gap with the community members who want to be there in person, but then also maybe who want to participate virtually. Like maybe they don't live in Tennessee, but they're looking for a writing group. And so I'm kind of toggling back and forth between those two things.
Wow.
Yeah, sounds that is awesome. And I wanted to I do want to get into, because I definitely want to get into your novel, of course. But since you did bring up MTSU Write, I do want to give our listeners a good overview of that initiative and the kind of activities that you do with it, because that's a great thing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, can you tell I'm excited about it? Yeah.
Well, I'd hope so. As much work as you put into it, yes.
So I'm so lucky to be involved with this amazing community. We have just incredible writers. They are students. They are retired professionals. They are post MFA grads. I mean, across the board. So from hobbyists and new writers all the way to very successful authors. We have a mentorship program, which is 3 semesters, and the students or mentees graduate with a certificate. It's non-credit, so it's not working toward a degree. But I've noticed a lot of people who have graduated from MFA programs or other types of degrees, or even people who aren't studying creative writing formally in college, they just want community. You know, they want to be able to have beta readers and people to bounce ideas around with, and even just get an opportunity maybe to boost their confidence if they're newer writers. And so we also have writing groups. Those are, we've had them in person in the past, but right now, I think after the pandemic, a lot of people got used to being comfortable at home and dressing in jammies and, you know, being on Zoom.
Yeah.
And talking. And I love that. And I love the in-person stuff too, but I think we can just reach more people and not have that geographic barrier in the way, and really just lift each other up and support the different writing projects we have going on, and spill over to other things that are expressive, like art and music. I have a songwriter who is a wonderful friend of mine, who actually went through 1 semester of the mentorship program. And, you know, for many years, he worked in the songwriting business in Nashville and just really wanted to spread into other areas of creative writing. So, it's been a really interesting experience. And now we have a partnership with Manta Press, who's the publishing house that published my book. And he, Tim McWhorter, who is the owner of Manta Press, he actually has been wonderful enough to allow some of our students at MTSU to act as interns and learn more about publishing and author interviews and book launches and all sorts of things. So, and we're looking for other partnerships too, and writers from all walks of life. You can check us out at www.mtsu.edu/write.
Nice. And
Wow.
you're in a great spot too, because down there, of course, everybody knows, Nashville with music, and then there's so much going on in the area of film and TV there. So the screenwriting world is right there. And then, of course,
Yeah,
got
it's such a great art field.
great literary tradition,
Yeah.
in the South and Tennessee and everything. So yeah, you're in a perfect location for this sort of program. Yeah, for creative writing. Yeah, a lot of stuff. And how many participants, the active participants, are you working with right now?
Oh, goodness. I would need to look that up to be accurate, but I think we probably have about 6 mentorships going on and probably close to 50 writing group
Mm-hmm.
members. But that
Nice.
doesn't include the formal students. I mean, I personally, right now, I have 4 undergraduate interns, and over the summer, I'll have an undergrad intern, a graduate intern, um, and I think I'm in talks right now with Manta to have some other projects on the forefront. So we should be hearing about that soon. And then we also have a literary magazine, excuse me, called Shift. And in this last issue that we just published, we had 50 different contributors. So
Wow.
yeah, there's a lot of people involved. But we're we have open arms and want more people, more
So
community.
I have a question. When do you sleep?
Yeah, my husband's in the other room laughing, I'm sure, if he can hear you. Yeah,
It's like you have no downtime. How do you juggle? I mean, really, how do you? I'm curious because I'm ADHD brained, right? So I've got 30 tabs open. Steven is one tab. You know, he focuses on one thing at a time, and he said, "I don't know how you do it. I'll have 3 different computers going, doing 3 different things." You know, and he's like, "I don't know how you do that, but
But
whatever."
but but I do keep 30 tabs open on my computer, so I can easily
You
shift
do,
between
but it's in my
landscapes.
head. See, I've got them in my brain, so
yeah,
I just can't imagine how you're juggling all this. So I am curious. I mean, what does a normal day look like for you? I mean, do you segment? You know, I'm going to do this at this hour. I'm going to do this at this hour. I mean, you know, really, how do you get all this done?
well, first of all, I can relate to both of y'all because my husband has ADHD as well, and his brain goes so
Ah,
fast, and
yes.
I deeply respect that. I'm a one tab at a person type, but
Hmm.
I also
Hmm.
keep 30 tabs open so that I can access them quickly.
Yeah.
Um, but I love being busy, and I love being engaged emotionally and intellectually, and just I love people. And so anything that involves all 3 of those things it's my happy place to be. But my husband, I'm so lucky to have him as a calming mechanism. I have to have my time with him at night. It's actually our anniversary
Yeah.
today anyway, so he's being patient and waiting for
Oh,
me.
Oh,
oh, well,
congratulations!
happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary!
You. And then I have my dogs here too, and thank goodness they're not barking. They're both sleeping
Oh,
all
don't
over the
worry.
floor.
We have 3 cats and 3 teenage grandchildren, so we know.
Oh, yes.
The house is
Mischief.
ever quiet.
So I also get to MTSU is so great. I feel so lucky to have a job there because they work with me and they ask me kind of, are you a morning person or evening person? When do you want to have your classes? So I
Yeah.
actually have my meetings entirely free and I can be home to just work from home. And then I go and I teach in the afternoons.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Yeah, so it really lets me juggle things. And then the other thing that really helps me just keep my mind straight is I work out 6 days a week because,
6.
yeah, I'll sit at the computer,
Wow.
be like cognitively overloaded. I'm like, all right, I got to step away. I got to go get on the
Yep.
treadmill because
Yep.
it's
Nice,
That's
nice. And
that's amazing.
as far as your creative writing teaching, what kind of things topic wise do you focus on in the classes you teach? I'm curious.
Well, so I teach Intro to Creative Writing at MTSU, and at SNHU, I teach workshops, both fiction and creative nonfiction. And so at SNHU, they're kind of, they're focused around the genres. In Intro to Creative Writing, I teach poetry, creative nonfiction, fiction, which is really my specialization. That's what my MFA is in. And then I ask students to do a digital story where they're taking either their poem or their creative nonfiction piece and they're moving it into kind of like a mini movie, 3 to 5 minutes. Although I've realized it's hard for students to do 3 to 5 minutes, so it's getting like smaller, maybe like 2 to 3 minutes. But it's challenging them to take the creative words and integrate sound and image and moving image.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's
Oh
just
yeah.
they're learning more about themselves as expressive people. and gaining
Uh-huh.
confidence and building community. And so those are the things I teach in creative writing right now. But hopefully at some point I'll have a horror class that I can focus on because that's really my genre. And then I also
Nice.
teach, composition, which is important. It's not my favorite, but I have a ghosts and folklore class. That's a literature class. And,
Oh,
and I also sometimes get to teach Gothic and horror. And
yes.
so, I have people in there who aren't writers, but also people who are, and they're super interested in film and, the written word and art and history. And so we kind of blend all those together and examine various pieces together and peel away the layers based on literary theory and literary elements. And the most important thing at MTSU is the social connection. What can we learn about humanity and each other by looking at art and by looking at literature? What's the sociocultural value, which is right up my alley. So yeah, those are my favorite classes that I'm teaching.
Now, what kind of genres are typically represented in your class as far as the students? Do they tilt more toward one genre, or do you have like an array of writers in terms of what they write? I'm curious.
It runs the gamut. I have a couple people who are actually songwriters, probably because of the location, Nashville and Murfreesboro. Um, but I would say there's a huge interest in horror and dark fiction. Now, that could be they're saying that because they know that's my interest. But I think that a lot of people really are drawn to that. Some are more interested in poetry. Creative nonfiction seems to be the area that most people are not comfortable, but by the end of the class, maybe find to be the most valuable because there's that. It's definitely not therapy. I mean, I teach psychology too, but that's completely separate. That's more like the therapeutic effect of telling their personal stories, and sharing those with other people.
Nice, nice. It's a nice little like a spectrum then, because it leads a little bit in my next question. With you being a creative writing professor and with you loving the horror genre, this is something that I've faced when I've gone into literary fiction circles. Sometimes they look at me,
Mm,
they find out that I write fantasy and horror, and
mm.
they're like, "Oh, you're one of those writers." so, so
Ah,
so what? And one thing that I've tried to do, and I even have given workshops on this, is the importance of speculative fiction, specifically fantasy, horror,
Mhm,
things like that, to the literary world, to literature.
mhm.
And so, what do you find horror, as far as the horror genre, that it uniquely, that from your perspective, it offers to the broader literary community? And what are its strengths?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a member of the Horror Writers Association, and I think a lot of people have a misconception about what that is and what horror writing, horror film, what that is about. For me, it is about community, and I have found the Horror Writers Association to be incredibly accepting and kind and generous. And I feel like the horror genre, it allows us to explore the ugly things in the world, the scary things, the uncanny, the things that, go bump in the night. And we all have this shared, I think, humanity of wanting to be safe, of wanting to be loved. But there are certain things I think that you can explore in that genre in a way that is, it engages people at a level that is conscious and unconscious. And I think understanding people's fears helps you understand them at a core level that maybe is beyond words, which might sound funny to say because I'm a writer. But I think there are other messages in the expression that maybe even we as authors, we don't realize we're putting out there. Which is like in literary circles when they're analyzing, they'll say death to the author. We're not looking at the author intention. We just want to analyze what's on the page. Now, being an author, I don't care for that too much, but I also see the value in it, because I might have an intention to write something and it's there, and I see it there, but somebody else with a completely different background, completely different lived experiences can pick up that book and have their own mirror for life, for pain and for healing, for growth, for the complexity of human relationships and how we lift ourselves up after we go through something difficult. And it's it's never been more humbling to me in my experience as an author and as a teacher. um, this semester in my Ghosts and Folklore class, I have a list of books for the first big project that students can choose from. But then the second big project, I'm like, you know what? You pick a book that means a lot to you. Pick a book that you feel like you can spend time with, even if it's outside of the genre. I'd love for you to stay with Ghosts and Folklore, but I think a lot of students, by the time they get toward the end of the semester, they're over it, you know? And so it's more important for them to pick something that they love. And I honestly, in this group of probably 20, 22 students, I had 12 of them pick my book. And I was a little caught off guard. I really didn't expect that. And to hear them analyze something that I wrote, um, humbling, incredibly humbling. And I just feel really grateful to be in that position. And they were able to ask questions, about behind the scene and what did this character mean and where'd you come up with this from? And then there's a multimodal component for this project that they have to come up with. It's like a paper, a presentation, and a multimodal component. So multimodal meaning like not just words trapped on a page, but something visual, something auditory, something that, I've had students compose dances. Like I had a student do that for Mexican Gothic. She composed this incredible dance for it. So for my book, The Butterfly Circle, there's a game in the book called Questions and Commands, which is pretty much like a truth or dare type of a thing. They actually designed a card deck, wrote
Oh,
questions
wow.
and commands based on my characters and the flowers in the book. And it utterly humbling. Yeah,
Yes, and that's a good segue because I was going to get into that in just about now, and that's the Butterfly Circle,
mm,
and so yes, I wanted to get into that. It's a YA novel, and could you tell us a bit about the about this book?
yeah, thank you for that. So it's set in 1948 in a home for unwed mothers. And so these are teenage
Oh,
girls who are pregnant, who are all not wanting to be there and who feel very judged, but they end up finding comfort in each other's friendships. And they have
uh-huh.
to really face some harsh treatment from a horrible headmistress, Mrs. Trill. There's a lot of discussion of religion, positive and critical, because at that time there were judgments of women who were in that
Yeah.
situation. But then the story becomes more because they discover that the home that they're in, called Prescott House, is actually haunted. And so they start to question, is this haunting dangerous, or is this helpful? Or is it appearing to be helpful and we're being fooled? So they stumble upon this rock in the woods, and it says, Harriet Prescott lost to madness. And they have the year of birth and year of passing. And so they start wondering about this person, and they give her a nickname, Hattie. Hattie Prescott lost to madness. They'll say that all the time. And she actually reveals herself in ghostly form to them. And there is a danger and there is a gift in that. They also discover that the home at one point was part of the Underground Railroad and literally has tunnels underneath the home to help escaped slaves kind of get through that station safely. And it was, I came up with this idea. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and there is a home there, a building that is now owned by the Cleveland Clinic. But at one point, it was an unwed mother's home and is said to be haunted. And so just those two things together, it got me. I was just so curious about it. And then so I started doing research on this home, and I learned that there is a tunnel underneath the home. And my husband and I were like, this home was built in probably the early 1900s, and we're like, what would this have been for? And the Underground Railroad did go through Cleveland and University Circle specifically, but also it could have been Prohibition, like,
Right.
yeah. And so apparently this tunnel went under the road to what used to be the original Cleveland Playhouse for theater. Yeah. And so we're like, what's that about? So I don't know what it was for, but I decided I was going to make it the Underground Railroad in the book.
Well, it
Nice.
could have been multiple uses actually throughout the ages. Once the Underground Railroad use was done, then I mean it went on to be used for other things. So that's pretty interesting. Now I'm curious.
Yeah, and
I
Prohibition used for
wrote
whiskey smuggling or something
yeah,
fun.
all kinds of stuff. Illegal activity down there.
Yeah,
Stephen, I think we need to take a road trip. I want to go down there and
yeah,
talk to the ghosties. The ghosties
yeah,
will tell me.
yeah. No kidding. But
Mhm.
19. You mentioned 1948 on the world stage. 1948 was a prominent year. A lot of stuff happening around the world. What drew you to 1948? Was there a reason for choosing that year and setting?
Originally, I was drawn to the 50s, but I thought 1948, it's just post World War II.
Right.
Yeah, and so I wanted to have one of the girls have a love interest that goes into the military, but I didn't want it to be during World War II. So it's a little bit of a quieter lull, I guess, just,
Mhm.
after World War II,
Right.
but also on the precipice of so many other things. I don't know exactly why I picked that year. Oh, you know what? I think what it was is that I was going back in my own lineage, and I was trying to anticipate, okay, if I have a character in the future that's my age and I want to set a story in the 90s of her being an unwed mother, because reveal, I actually was an unwed mother at a very young
Mhm.
age. And so that's kind of like
Me
where,
too.
yeah. So you
And
mean
I actually lived in an unwed mother's home, so that's actually quite fascinating. Yeah, I'm
it?
going to have to get this book now.
Oh my gosh. Well, you're probably going to be like, oh, well, this was wrong and this was wrong. And this was oh my gosh.
I
Well,
had a great house mother, though. She wasn't mean.
oh, that's very cool. I love that. I love it.
Yeah, she was very nice.
Wow. Yeah. So I was going back
Mhm.
to the lineage and trying to figure out. So then my mother would have been born in X year and then her mother. And so I just was trying to figure out a way that I could tell the story that I wanted to with multiple storylines, like multiple timelines.
Mhm. And is it a standalone novel or is it part of a something that's a series?
It is a series. It's actually a trilogy, and
Okay.
this book, I'm supposed to be finished writing it by the end of the summer, and I don't know how quickly Manta's going to get it out, but probably early 2026 is what I would anticipate.
Very nice, very nice. And so, what's been the feedback so far on this? As far as 'cause it sounds like a fantastic book.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I'm sure it's not for everybody. That every book has the people that love it and the people that don't. The
Hmm.
feedback online has been really positive, and not just positive, but emotional. I think that the girls represent different personalities and different communities, and just vulnerability that is connected to um, sexuality and also friendship, and just they ask a lot of important questions that, even though it's set back in the 40s, they're still quite relevant to today. And so I actually had a couple of my students too, and from online, get so excited when they realize that one of the characters is actually from the gay community. And I didn't plan for that to be that way. But as through the process of writing the characters, one of them just kind of told me that that's why she ended up in this situation, because she was trying to prove that she wasn't gay. And so she
Right.
engaged in certain activities, and
Uh
but
huh.
yeah, and I hope that I did that storyline justice. It People seem to really be emotionally connected to that particular character. Um, Yeah, so I hope that we continue to do those characters justice in book 2 and allow for them to be flawed and to make mistakes. We're going to move out of the unwed mother's home into a couple different environments, so the girls are more separated in book 2, but one of those environments is an asylum because Miss Trill, the house mother, gets very judgmental and actually sends them away.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a really good ensemble kind of story, with multiple, key characters, and sounds like they're going to go on quite the journey, and a little bit of coming of age too, for sure. Is what
Yeah,
I'm kind of hearing.
it's
Yeah.
interesting because I never planned it to be a YA story. But when my publisher, Tim, got a hold of it, he was like, I'm not going to push you to do this, but I'm just seeing an opportunity here. We might want
Right.
to this as YA. And so I was like, okay, whatever you want to do, that's fine.
So it's going to be a trilogy then, just to clarify. Okay, great. And currently, the Butterfly Circle is available. And what are some spots where folks can pick that up?
Anywhere you get books online, I would say. Some bookstores, we have it on campus in our bookstore. You can go to Manta Press, their website, and it's sold there. We also have the audiobook and the ebook up on Amazon with the paperback.
Great. Yeah. So you have an audiobook version too. Nice.
Yes. I actually read it myself, which was a very
Oh, wow.
interesting process.
Oh, you did
Yeah.
you did your own narration. Wow.
Yeah.
That's not always the case.
That's
Yeah.
not
There's
common. Yeah,
authors
that's
who, yeah.
actually not too common. So
When you
that's fascinating.
when you get the author to, yeah, that's a
Mhm.
project. A lot of people don't realize it's not just a matter of just
Yes.
reading through the book.
There's a
It's a
lot
lot
to
is
it.
involved. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I'll tell you a story. So
Yeah.
as I told you, I have my dogs here, and they're always sitting by my feet, whatever I'm doing when I'm at
Oh, yeah.
home. I was recording from home using a microphone, and then I went through the editing process, and then I was listening to the first cut just to make sure there was nothing I missed. And there was one spot toward the end that I'm all serious and I'm using this tone, and then all of a sudden I'm like, Sam, cut it out. Get my dog.
Ah, that's us during the podcast. There's something you remember going, Leon, stop it, or Vicky, stop it.
Yeah.
I'm like, get down from there. Stop. Don't do that.
Yep.
Quit
Yeah.
scratching. The fur babies. They're wonderful, aren't they?
Yeah.
Wonderful and a challenge, yes.
Amen.
But if that's in an audio book, you'd have the people that were familiar with the book wondering, hey, there's this new character all of a sudden. Where'd they come from?
Yeah,
Who the hell is this? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
That's a good
awesome.
that's a good story. But that's awesome that you got to be the narrator for your own audiobook. That's awesome.
yeah.
That is neat. And I do want to point out that me and you have been in discussion and that it is up on our website, but you will actually be doing a workshop at Imaginarium. I don't have the times yet, but I'm working on those. So we'll know very soon. But yeah, if you want to talk a little bit about your workshop that you're going to be doing at Imaginarium.
Sure. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm so excited. And first of all, I learned about Imaginarium through Tony Acree.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
So,
he actually did a small workshop for us on publishing at MTSU Write, and he was
okay.
mentioning that, and I was like, oh, I think I might have to go. So that's how I heard about it. And when I saw all of the awesome things that you're offering, I was like, yes, I'm so in. So, yeah, I'll be teaching a workshop on revealing character through active setting.
Yeah.
And the reason that I feel strongly about this is, well, there was a grad level class that I was helping SNHU kind of redesign, and I had to pick a textbook to go with the class. It's all based on setting. And so I picked Mary Buckham's A Writer's Guide to Active Setting. And not only is it an awesome book, But I also notice that many of my students and my mentees have a really challenging time showing, not telling, and really grasping what does that
Mm,
mean. But when you have an active setting, when you have the character interacting with that setting, you can integrate the telling a little bit more as long as they're moving and doing something rather than sitting there and reminiscing about such and such to where you slip into that telling rather than showing. And so I
right.
think a lot of people really could be helped by this, and it could just maybe take some of that writing to the next level if that's something that they're struggling with.
Yeah, because I think a lot of, especially baby authors, as we call them,
Mhm.
they want to set that tone. They want to, their setting. They want to make sure people are getting what they're seeing,
Mhm.
in their mind's eye, and they get way too. It's like an info dump, right? You
Right.
get way too descriptive. The character's doing nothing. You're
Right.
just taking 2 or 3 pages, Stephen King, to talk about, like one setting. And I love Stephen King, by the way. I'm not harping on him. I've got his books all around me as we speak. But he does get very descriptive, especially in these earlier days. Now, if you've followed Stephen King throughout his progression, as decades I have, it's a lot more toned down now than what he was at the beginning, right?
Mhm.
Because he doesn't waste 2 or 3 pages on a description of a setting so much. And if it is, it's like you're saying, the character is actually a part of it. They're immersed in it. They're doing something. There's action. You're not just talking about the setting.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I think a lot of younger authors really get tripped up on that because they want to be over descriptive, but yeah, you got to tone that back. You got to reel it in, you know.
And I
So
appreciate what.
what's your biggest suggestion on reeling it in like that? I mean, other than your character obviously has to be doing something, be immersed, be active with the setting. What are some other things that you can implement to get your point across and to set the tone and the mood of the setting?
I mean, I think that's going to vary based on the individual writer's process. And I think I really came to this realization about myself in my MFA program, which was the Neo MFA up in Ohio. And,
Hmm.
I know a lot of people don't have the time necessarily to do that or the desire, for the actual education, like the formal education. But what it gave me was the time to dedicate to learning about how I approach writing. And so rather than me just saying, oh, well, you can do this and you can do this and you can do this, I like to start with where that writer is. Like, are they coming from the world of music? Are they coming from the world of film? Are they coming
Okay.
from the world of business and accounting? And now they're retiring and they want to begin
Hmm.
their journey as a writer. So when
Hmm.
you start to write these things, what lands on the page first? Like, what is your way into the story? But like, even as you were just explaining, Holly, with Stephen King, if you look at his trajectory, how he has grown as a writer, you know,
Yes.
that was his way into the story, that thick description, which we love thick description. We want that. But when it gets to be too much, then the story loses momentum or it can lose momentum. And
Right.
so maybe it's the writer's tendency, their way in to tell and not show. Okay, so that's the first step. But now you need to go back in and say, okay, I want to convey all of this. What can I convey through dialogue? What can I convey through interaction with setting? Are there other ways to integrate this knowledge, like dropping little hints and putting Easter eggs in there that a reader might not pick up on until the second time they read the book? Like Toni Morrison, my goodness. I think I've read Beloved 15 times and written multiple
Wow.
papers. And every time I read it, I'm seeing new things. I'm understanding from a different level. And sometimes I even question my initial impressions, like, is Beloved actually a ghost or not? Or what is happening, So I think, and studying other writers and the ways that writers accomplish what they do. Finding the genre that you want to write in, that you're drawn to, reading and reading and reading and devouring other people's way into the story, but then finding yours. And sometimes that's imitation. Sometimes it has to do with, and I think this is why I feel so strongly about having that multimodal component at the end of Intro to Creative Writing. It's forcing people to take different lenses. I have them go on a sound walk. Go on a walk with your phone and just listen and record sounds, because oftentimes we're so busy in our own heads and our own thoughts that we miss really cool things going on around us that could add to our story. And then go back and rewrite a scene thinking about, well, what is your character here as they're walking through the day? What does the sky look like? How does the light change? How does color take on new meaning? What symbols can you weave in throughout to convey some of the information you're so tempted to tell, but you really need to show? And so I guess that's the best advice that I could give as a starting point. But I think it's a process of self-discovery.
Absolutely.
True. Yes. And like you said, as people go on and you develop as a writer, things change. You learn different tricks of the trade, so to speak. But what would be your greatest trick or tip to a new author that coming out of the gate to actually decide on, what's going to be the first, like you got people that like all genres, okay? That
Mhm.
they love the art of writing. They love, literary works. They love all the different genres. What would your reaction be to them saying, "Hey, what genre should I write first?" How would you lean them toward one way or the other, or would you just say you're going to have to sit down and do a pro and con list and figure out, where you're at in your life, and what's eating at you most? I mean, how do you gear people toward the right genre to start writing?
Well, I think so. My brain's going in a couple different places.
Okay.
Um, if I was sitting with somebody and they really needed help, like guidance, and it's a one-on-one situation, I would probably go into coaching mode, which
Mm-hmm.
is life coaching, where you really ask a series of questions more than offer answers. So the questions, the answers that that person is giving you actually help them to come to their own conclusion.
Okay.
Because I think it can be, I want to always be respectful and careful with any writer. And
Right.
so it's not my job to tell them what to do. It's my job to help them discover for themselves
So.
what's in their heart. What's
Mhm.
the story that's begging to be told. And maybe it's multiple genres for different stories, but what is the most urgent story? So that's a conversation I would probably have. But another approach that I use in Intro to Creative Writing, and this isn't my idea, this is actually, oh my goodness, and I don't have the names of these people. Florence Gonzalez is one of the writers of this article, but she came up with an approach with one of her instructors, or actually, I think her instructor came up with the approach first, and then she wrote this article in the Journal of Creative Writing Studies. And it's about the portrait of the artist, or POTA. And you start your journey to creative writing by gathering a portfolio of examples of writing that you really like, maybe that you have done, if you have done any,
Mhm.
sample playlists, music, aesthetics as far as visuals, textures, the things that you're curious about and passionate about. And that's what we share with each other before we do any writing, actually. And so
Oh, okay.
that folder becomes something that you use as inspiration. Like for me, mine's in the form of a bulletin board that's up in my office right now, just with ideas about book 2 of the Butterfly Circle. And so through that process of creating that folder, they kind of, well, and to be fair, I require them to write the creative nonfiction piece first, and then poetry, and then fiction. So that kind of forces the hand a little bit. But they start to question, okay, I want to write about this idea. What would it look like as a poem? What would it look like if I was telling a true story? what would it look like as fiction? Would I be a character? Would I try to create a character who's totally different than me? And I think I also have realized that that's a pitfall that a lot of newer writers fall into. We have a tendency to make characters like ourselves. I think we all do as human beings, but as new writers, you can make a character so much like yourself that the character doesn't make different decisions than you would. And
Right.
that can make for a pretty boring story if we're not careful.
That is true. That was well stated. That was well said. I do find it
Yes.
fascinating that, yeah, you talk about you bringing in, music they listen to, and different things that they like, and hobbies, and you can bring in all kinds of things, different art, and
Mhm.
that influences, because we all have our influences
Mhm.
of different uh, media, different works, whether it's paintings or it's songs or it's, different things, movies. We
Mhm.
all have our different little favorites and quirks of each one.
Mhm.
Hmm. And
You know,
and I love how you bring in the audio aspect, and to get them
Yeah.
to start to think in terms of using all the senses in their writing, because that's
Mhm.
something that
Yes.
I do notice with a lot of young writers, is that they'll have a few of the senses, but then
Hmm.
they won't make use of a couple of the senses that could really add a lot to their writing. And I
Yeah.
think
Use
that's
them all. Use them
yeah,
all.
a
Hmm.
great exercise. But you were saying, I'm sorry, you were about to say something, I think.
what was that? Oh, I think another exercise I might try for somebody who's trying to figure out how to show rather than tell is to imagine a scene that they're thinking about writing first as a film, as a movie. What would it look like?
Hmm.
Imagine a scene where there's no telling of anything, and all you do is you see what's going on. A conversation, there's dialogue between two of the characters. How does that shift the way that you tell the story? And I would just have them rewrite and rewrite and rewrite from different angles, even if it's just one small 3-minute scene.
Hmm. Well, that sounds like a great exercise. Yeah, because that's and two, you're also giving them a good a good primer for the art of screenwriting, which is very
Mhm.
different,
Oh, yeah.
from prose writing. And
I,
yeah, it's like
I
apples and
do.
oranges. Yeah.
It is. It is apples and oranges, and I do have a different kind of question that it's a little off topic of that. But how do you feel about the relevant being more irrelevant to the era that you're writing, opposed to the time you're in? So if you're writing just a regular novel, it's set in the present day, right?
Mhm.
But what if your generation, say like we're Generation X, okay, we're
Mhm.
using some of our lingo, we're using things that we know. But if you go down, like Generation Z is not going to know what we're talking about, okay? Um, so how do you gear people toward being relevant, or do you just say, hey, you're the writer. If you think your audience is going to be this, or if you feel that's what you need to write it. I mean, what's your guidance there about being relevant with the different things that you're mentioning or slang that you're using?
I think most of the stuff that I write is historical in nature, even if
Mhm.
it's like 1980s or 1990s. And so I really go back to that time period and I look at the language and how it's used. I think if I was trying to guide someone who's writing a contemporary story, especially from a different generation's perspective, they're going to have to talk to people of that generation. I mean,
Right.
like, I one of my students the other day, for example, said, you know, she turned over my book, and saw my picture on the back, and she goes, Dr. L, you serve in this picture. And I was like, huh? How did you mean? And I was kind of like looking at her blankly, and I'm like, it means you look good. I was like, oh, thanks.
I'm serving what? What are you talking? What?
I would
Uh,
run things by my daughter, who's now,
right, right.
it's like, and she's like, well, wait a minute, I'm 30. I don't know what the kids are saying these days,
Yeah,
so.
That's what my children tell me now. They're like, heck if I know. Because they're all, near 30 now. So, but we got the grandkids, thank God, that
Oh
can
yes,
help us fill us in
I was going to say
about resin and all that stuff.
Holly and I are fluent in Gen Z, Gen Alpha speak.
Yes, we actually know what the devil they're talking about, but
we do follow it.
without them, we'd have no clue. So, I'm thinking, I was actually editing why I brought it up because I was actually editing a book, and the person had mentioned GQ magazine.
Mm,
Well, okay. We understand what that is, right? But this is set in present day. Now, if I ask my millennial children what GQ magazine, they're going to say, "What the hell are you talking about?" They're not even going to know.
mm,
So that's why I'm saying, how do you guide people to say, "Now, listen, you might want to think about restating."
yeah,
This because not everybody's going to get it, you know.
totally agree. And I think it's a complicated topic too. And I think it's also valuable to recognize, like, if you're having difficult discussions in the piece that you're writing, you want to make sure that you're not being offensive unintentionally. And
Oh
so,
yeah,
sensitivity readers, data
yep.
readers, that's, I think, um, another level of, filter, making sure that the piece says what you want it to say in the way that you want to say it.
That's
And
not offending.
yeah, that relevant language.
Yes, because that's where the generational aspect comes in.
Hmm.
Um, because I also have authors that I edit that are boomers, right? That's a whole different generation,
Yep.
and a lot of times I have to say, now listen. I know you didn't mean it this way. However,
Oh, yeah.
your readers, that are a little younger than you are not going to take it this way. They're going to take it this way. And it's offensive. And you might want to tweak that and so yeah, you have to reel it in. But yeah, generational writing is definitely a thing. And if you go back, I mean, we go back to the Victorian era. I mean,
Yep.
look at the slang and stuff they used. People that aren't used to reading, especially Victorian English, are going to be like, "What are they even talking about?" And yeah, so it's difficult if you're trying to write something that's going to be timeless. You're always going to have something in there, right? That's not relatable to the time period, but it can still be timeless. You have to be careful with it.
Totally agree. I actually have a funny
Mhm.
story about that Victorian slang. So I have a text chat that goes on with three of my dear friends, lifelong friends. And one of them was very fascinated with this article that she came upon about Victorian slang. And one of the
Uh-huh.
phrases was bitch the pot, which means
Yes.
to gossip. And so we have
Right.
our text chain titled Bitch the Pot with a teapot.
Yes, I love it. The Victorian era is my favorite. I love it. Queen Victoria. We have our cats are named Queen Victoria, and Prince Albert, and
Like,
Prince Leopold. So
over.
yeah, so
That's
I
true.
love it. I love it. But yeah, it is a thing, and I try to tell my authors, you got to think about it. It's generational. Think about your target audience. Who's going to be reading this?
Mhm.
And yeah, if it's obviously if it's pertinent to the story, you have to put certain things in. But if you're just using it as a description or a comparison, or you got to be careful. You got to be
Yeah,
careful how you do
or
that.
or the reverse of that. If you're in the Victorian era, you're not going to have somebody using the term "riz," so you can't
No,
use it
there's no
in
risk.
that anachronisms. You got to be careful about
That
the
word don't even
reverse of that,
exist there. Yeah.
and having things from our time pop up in the middle of the Roman Empire or something like that. So because that could
Exactly.
really really throw a reader
Oh yeah,
off.
and the Roman
Yeah.
Empire, and they're saying,
Yeah.
"I'm cooked. I'm cooked."
Yeah.
Well, they're going to
Yeah.
think, "What?
Yeah.
You're cooked?
Yeah.
What? Somebody
Marching through,
boiled you?"
yes,
You know?
the Legion marching through the Teutoburg forest. We're cooked. Yeah,
Yeah.
it wouldn't quite be the same. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh
And,
man, that would be too funny. But
and I think it is important too, though, when we're talking about historical things to really be accurate, even if it's uncomfortable. So,
Yes.
like in the butterfly circle, for example, toward the end, there's an unwed home for colored women, and
Yes.
using the word colored is
Uh
not
huh.
normal language ever. I find it offensive, and it is offensive today. But
mhm.
in 1948, that was the terminology that people used, and there was
Yeah.
segregation in certain places. Yeah. Um,
My
Yeah,
mother,
it's
my
historical. Yeah.
mother is 90 years old.
mhm,
And Stephen hadn't heard that word.
mhm,
Me and Stephen's been together over a decade now, but he had not heard that word since his grandmother, right? Colored. He had not heard anybody use that in that context until my mother. And I'm like, yes, that's what she says, and then she'll say other things, and I'm like, Mother, that's no, you can't say that. That's She goes, but
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
true. I'm like, Mother, you can't say that. I know you mean well, but you can't say that,
You have to
but she
correct
just,
her.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
A bit.
it is what it is. She was
But
born in 1935,
yeah,
mhm.
she
and
slipped
it
back
was a
into
different time.
1940s lingo. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Sometimes.
it's totally different for them. And I'm like, you can't, we take her out in public. She
Uh,
has no edit button. I'm like,
yeah.
you can't say that. You cannot say that.
Yes. Oh
There's a
yeah.
lot of things. I'm like, you can't say that.
Yeah. hmm
Shut up. You can't say that. Because she's a
That's
little
true.
fireball. But yeah, it's generational,
Yeah.
and it is. And, you got to be careful. And it's just like, think about it though, what we write now and what we say, even though we're in a period of time, thank God I live in this period, knock on wood, that we're
Mhm.
trying to be more sensitive
Yeah.
to people's feelings, and we're more accepting, and it's a glorious time, right?
Mhm.
However, in another 30, 40 years down the road, people are going to say, oh my God, they were so offensive.
Yeah.
you know it is because people evolve over time. Different
Mhm.
things are acceptable socially that
Mhm.
aren't acceptable now, you know and it's going to just evolve from
Yeah.
here on out.
And that
So
language.
when me and Steven are 90, we're going to be looking back and saying things, and our great grandkids are going to be saying, that's offensive, you can't say that. And it's with
Well,
your writing. So you try to be as non-offensive as you can,
Right.
and timeless. It's hard. It's hard to be timeless, And I'm a huge fan of Edgar Allan Poe. I think his poems are timeless. I don't feel that he offended anybody, you know. But that's one example of, I think his poetry is timeless.
Mhm.
It's very hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Agreed.
is. Hmm.
it is.
Hmm. But yeah, I was curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, we've gotten to explore some great literary kind of things tonight, and so it's been fun, a lot of fun. And but I do want to give you a chance to talk about anything that we did not cover tonight that you wanted to cover, because I know we've talked about your book and MTSU Write, and we've talked about some literary topics and things. But is there anything that we haven't
A
covered
topic.
that you'd like to mention before
I
we're
so I can't say a whole lot about it, but I will have a collection of short stories, 12 stories
Ooh,
coming out. I don't know exactly when, and I can't say who is publishing it yet, but hopefully soon. But it's going to be called Devil's Oak: Awaking
Mhm.
a Feminine Wound. And it's basically a collection of short stories that most of them have already been published in literary magazines. I was actually nominated for the Pushcart for Devil's Oak, which was such a powerful
nice.
piece to write.
Mhm.
It took place in post slavery days. And it's about a young girl going back to her family plantation. And she really has no idea what that history was, but she discovers it while she's there, in some very gruesome ways. And so it's about her coming to terms with the fact. Yeah. And so my husband and I, when I was researching this, because I really love history and I love to research as much as I can, we actually went down to New Orleans. And we went to a museum called the Whitney Plantation, which was a plantation. They had sugarcane and indigo, but it is now a museum that really exists to educate people about the horrors of slavery and really what happened. And while we were there, I took a picture of this oak tree, a live oak tree that was so beautiful and haunting and just symbolized the whole experience to me. And so that became the center of this story, Devil's Oak, and about this young girl coming to terms with what her family had done to other human beings. And so the tone throughout really like rewritten fairy tales. Like one is Snow White from the Queen's perspective, but she's actually the heroine in it, and a shapeshifter. And so there's lots of like myth and lore interwoven. And there's actually a hidden additional timeline to the butterfly circle that's in the 1990s that's going to be in this collection as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
We'll definitely have to have you back on the show to talk about the collection when it comes out. Sounds like there's a lot to cover. It sounds great.
And I can't wait to meet y'all in person. I'm so excited to be at the Imagination.
Absolutely. Likewise. Yeah, for sure.
We have a lot of subjects in common. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, where can folks give your connections for yourself and also for MTSU Write and your programs?
Sure. So all of my social links are available on my website. It's www.maryleoson.com. And Leoson is spelled Leoson, like son of Leo. And then for MTSU Write, it's www.mtsu.edu/Write, WRITE.
Great. Yeah, I've had a great time with you tonight. Yeah, discussing. I love getting into kind of the weeds on literary topics and things like that. So it's been a blast. Yeah, speaking with you tonight. And
we've covered a lot.
Definitely want to have you back. Yeah, definitely want to have you back sooner than later. And yeah, we'll definitely have you on when you get your new collection out and everything. And looking forward to the workshop and seeing you in person in July. But I'll sign off now and let Holly wrap it up with you.
Hey, sounds good. Thank you.
And happy anniversary, too. Yes,
happy anniversary.
Yes.
We're sorry we took her time up, Mr. Leah. How do you properly say your last name? I do not want to mispronounce it.
It's Leoson, like son of Leo. I've got everything from Leoson to Leeson, but it's Leoson.
Leoson. Okay.
Yes.
I like that. That's neat. That's got a whole history of its own.
It does, actually.
That's cool. Yeah.
That's another rabbit hole for another time, right?
Well, as anybody that knows me knows, I'm very partial to lions. That's a big thing with me. So Leo already wins me over. So yeah, Leoson is perfect.
He's the lion-hearted. So yeah. We have lions all over our house, so that's cool.
Oh,
but yes,
wolves.
Wolves. Wolves are cool too.
Oh yes.
Mm-hmm. We love wolves. But thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we will see you in July. And I will talk to you before then. I'll be emailing you, but to maybe get you on some panels and have you participate in those too, because I know you will probably want to, and that would be great, to get your perspective. So thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts. And we definitely glad to have you back on the show after Imaginarium when you're getting your short story collection together and hear about it.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Take care.
All right. Well, enjoy your anniversary. Good night.
Right.
And and listeners, join us next Wednesday, same place, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Another great guest, another great chat. For the rest of the week, be creative. Good night, all.